Welcome back. We just got done looking at how the chassis ground from our star ground comes through our connector PCBs and through our interface connection, which goes to here, and then how that interface connection ground travels along our PCB to this interface connection. This is the output connector from the channel strip. Now all of the channel strips here are connected together with this lovely ribbon cable, and that lovely ribbon cable also interfaces with our master section. You know, starting here with the left-right bus master PCB, the aux master PCB, and our 8 group master PCBs. Again, just to review, we want to notice that the ground trace interfaces with all of these pins. This pin is isolated and goes up to the pot frame, which is connected metal to metal to our dress panel. I want to take a moment just to point out that though we have paint on the bottom of our dress panel for our input PCB mounts to the frame with screws here, and then also at the meter bridge when that's installed, and that is mounted metal to metal to the side, each end of the frame, and that is riveted to our bottom panels and our back plane, which is our system ground reference. So I have some concerning questions about potential loops being able to come through our interface cabling up through here and then back out through our chassis ground pin up to our pot frame, to our dress panel, back to here and back on through. So I'm not sure, but it seems to me that there are 2 potential ground paths right there for the entire audio system. Not quite sure how to address that yet, because you would have to, I think probably ideally, isolate the dress panels from the frame here, rather than remove that, rather than removing that connection to the system ground, because, okay, remember I said that this pin to the chassis ground, that's labeled here, I said that that is isolated. It doesn't connect to the system ground reference trace here. It's isolated on this pin, but when we get over to the group section, to the master section, that pin, which is right here, I'm sorry if this isn't very easy to see, that's right here, it is linked all together with these other pins. It's no longer isolated once we get down here. So we essentially have our ground coming in here, jumper, jumper, and then able to go out to the rest of the system. And of course, each input PCB is already getting ground reference through all of these, and between the PCBs at our ribbon cable, but then we also have that ground reference when it comes up to the master section, being able to go back out on that one pin, because those pins are all connected together up here and here and here. You know, every PCB in the master section has all those connected. So then we've got those going back out the ribbon cable, and that's where this chassis pin gets its reference to ground, which goes up to the dress panel. So it just seems like there is an awful lot of redundancy in the grounding scheme, which of course is a concern. So again, we've already kind of covered it, but that ground comes through the ribbon cable up to all of our master PCBs, and that seems to be the only source of system ground reference for the master section and for the PCBs in the master section. It does not come through this cable here, because this connector, which goes on this connector PCB, sorry, wrong way. Okay, this connector PCB attaches and ties all of them together, and that connector right there is where that hooks up. That ground wire in that connector only goes to group or to meter source select switches, and then this connector right here, I'm sorry, that's the one that goes to the group, or to the meter select switches. And then this one, that trace doesn't go anywhere except to, no, I'm sorry, other way around. This is the one that goes to the group, or to the meter source select switches. The only place this one goes, the ground wire on this one, is the headphone jack. So our grounding for the audio system comes from the star ground, goes through every single connector PCB out to every single interface, input-output interface connector, and then to every input strip, which are then also interconnected with the ribbon cable. And then that travels up to the master section. That's where it gets its ground. And then we also have a ground that's looping back out to an isolated pin on each input PCB that goes up to chassis to ground the dress panel for each input PCB, which also could potentially get grounding from the chassis frame itself. So we got a lot of issues. So that's the state of the union.